I'd like to call to order the December 15, 2015 meeting of the Sayreville Board of Education. Everybody please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Board Secretary, has this meeting been advertised in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act?
Yes, it has, Mr.
Very good.
McEnroe.
Could we do roll call, please?
Mr. Bauca?
Here.
Mrs. Bacco?
Here.
Mrs. Bloom?
Here.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Here.
Mr. Syak?
Here.
Mrs. DePinto? Mrs. Trapp? Mr.
Here.
Walsh? Mr.
Here.
McEnroe?
President, I need a motion to go into executive.
So moved.
I need a second.
Second.
Can you read the resolution for executive session, please?
Whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975, permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas this public body's opinion on such circumstances presently exists, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education, Borough of Sayreville, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of any action upon the hereinafter specified subject matter. General nature of subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Personnel, including but not limited to agenda items, attorney-client privilege, various legal issues associated with the Sayreville War Memorial High School football program. It is anticipated at this time the above stated subject matter shall be made public at such time as the need for non-disclosure no longer exists. This resolution shall take effect immediately. Mr. Bauca?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes.
Mrs. DePinto? Mrs. Trapp?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh? Mr.
Yes.
McEnroe?
Yes, the board will go into executive. We'll reconvene in public at 7:30.
I move we return to public.
I'd like to call to order the December 15, 2015 meeting of the Sayreville Board of Education. Everybody please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Board Secretary, has this meeting been advertised in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act?
Yes, it has, Mr. McEnroe.
Roll call.
Mr. Bauca?
Here.
Mrs. Bacco?
Here.
Mrs. Bloom?
Here.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Here.
Mr. Syak?
Here.
Mrs. DePinto?
Yeah.
Mrs. Trapp?
Here.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. McEnroe?
I am present. Can you please synopsize the discussions in executive?
In executive session this evening on the personnel, included but not limited to agenda items, the board discussed donating of sick days and also review of grievances. Under attorney-client privileges, the board discussed various legal issues associated with the Sayreville War Memorial High School football program.
Okay, our student council representative is not here tonight, so we'll go right to presentations. Dr. Labby, State of the School Address.
Would you prefer to do
No, go ahead.
this first?
Press on, sure. Let's go by schedule. Yeah.
Since it'll be quick.
So it'll be quick, so don't worry.
Definitely, right?
The pressure's on now.
I'm under a tremendous amount of pressure. Okay. I'd like to thank everybody for attending here tonight. I know most people are here to support Shelley and her big presentation after this. But today is also a very special evening. Tonight we're going to give the State of the School District address. Basically, the purpose of this is to provide our board and the public with a summary of the current state of the district in terms of finance and infrastructure, student achievement, personnel, and operations and compliance. So this evening, you're going to hear a little bit from me. You're going to hear from Dr. Shediak, Ms. Reese, and Mr. Glock Malloy, as well as Mr. DeAndrea, as we bring you up to date in terms of where we are right now as a school district, both educationally as well as a business operation. Of course, we begin with our goals, and in September, the Board of Education approved goals, basically goals that focused on increasing student achievement, promoting future student success, increasing revenue and funding for all the wonderful programs that we provide our students, improving communications, and enhancing the climate. As I mentioned here, again, our team of administrators will be presenting to you, beginning with Dr. Shediak.
Good evening.
First thing I'm going to present to you tonight is our park scores. We just received them within the past few weeks, and these scores will also be sent home to the parents on December 21st. Here I have a graph that shows what our scores look like in grades 3 through 11 as compared to both the nation and the state of New Jersey. If you notice, Sayreville scores are in blue. Okay, this is the passing rate. In order to be considered passing, a student had to receive 750 points out of a maximum of 850. As you can see in grades 3, this is in language arts. Over 50% of our students passed. In grade 4, more than 60% passed. In grade 5, a little over 50%. In grade 6, we were close to 50%. Grade 7, about 55%. Grade 8, we were about 46%. Grade 9 was 48%. And then grade 10 was 43%. And grade 11 was 41%. As you see, in all cases, with the exception of grade 8, we exceeded state and national passing rates. We don't have anything to compare this to in previous years because this is the first year that we received park scores. Okay, in math, these are the results in math. Again, the Sayreville results are shown in blue. The nation's results are in yellow, and the state's results are in green. We did very well in grades 3, 4, and 5. We were below the state average in grade 6, but we went back up in grade 7. Grade 8, we were lower than the state average in Algebra 1, Geometry, and again in Algebra 2. In 8th grade, not all of our students in grade 8 took the 8th grade park assessments. If they were enrolled in Algebra 1, their results are counted in with Algebra 1. Okay, our 8th grade students in Algebra 1 should be noted 82% of those students passed park. Okay, CUSAC. Now, every year, every district goes through a monitoring process, and some years it's more detailed than others. This year, Sayreville will have a visit from the state on January 14th, but in preparation for that, we had to rate ourselves in various areas. Okay, and the various areas are instruction and program, fiscal management, governance, operations, and personnel. What happens in January is the state's going to come in, they're going to look at our self-assessment, they're going to look through some of our paperwork, they are going to visit the schools, and then they are going to rate us in each of these areas. Now, to be considered passing, we should have 80%. Unfortunately, on our self-assessment, we scored 76%. And some of the reasons why we lost points in this area are related to our test scores. And this is based on the 2013-14 test scores. Okay, so it's going back 2 school years. In some areas, we missed out on scoring points because we were less than 1% below what we needed to be. The difference was small. In one area, we had 74.4, and we needed to have 75%. So we did lose some points there. We lost some points on the graduation rate with students. We have a terrific graduation rate, but some of our special education students were not able to pass the HESPA exam in order to graduate. So they are exempted from passing it. And that's put in place because these students should not be expected to pass that exam. However, when it comes time for QSAC, that gets counted against you. So, okay, SAT scores. In this case, we were able to compare them to previous years. In red are the current year scores, and it's broken down into 4-year college bound, 2-year college bound, our total students, and it compares to the state averages. And this presentation will be available on the district website tomorrow. Okay. Advanced placement comparisons. Again, here, what we do is we look at our total enrollment in our advanced placement courses. Now, these are courses which are actually, students can take them at the high school level, and if they receive a grade of 3 or higher on the AP exam at the end of the year, these students will get college credit. The colleges will offer them credit for a course. So we had 322 students. Numerous students take more than one course, but 322 courses, students were enrolled in courses. 189 of those students took exams. 140 received grades of 3 or higher, for 74% receiving grades of 3 and above. Now, this current school year, the Board of Education is paying for the students in all AP courses to take the exam. So our rate of students who are taking the exam should be considerably higher this year. Okay, some initiatives for this current school year. We initiated on-course lesson plans and curriculum builder, which enables the teachers to easily upload their electronic lesson plans and to align it with our district curriculum. They can also share lesson plans with each other. We have a literacy academy for our students who are at risk of literacy problems. We have started that in our elementary schools. It'll be moving up to the UES and to the middle school. We have response to intervention, which is another way of working with our students who are struggling. We began quarterly benchmark assessments to take a look at how our students are doing before they get to the end of the year, before they get to that summative exam like the PARCC. We are going to be using more online assessments, especially beginning with the second marking period assessments. We're integrating language arts and social studies in kindergarten through 5th grade. We are integrating science and math into STEM. We have Sayreville University, our new program of professional development for both our experienced teachers and our novice teachers. And we have a looping pilot going on where students in kindergarten and 1st grade will stay with the same teacher for 2 years. And we're currently piloting that in some of our elementary schools. Looking forward, some things that we're looking forward to working on in the upcoming year. Standard-based report card in grades kindergarten through 5th grade. In September, we will have it in place for kindergarten through 2nd grade, the following year for grades 3 through 5. We're going to be looking at a system for warehousing all of our data. We get great information and great data from all the assessments and from PARCC and so on. So we are looking forward to organizing it all and being able to really look at it closely. We're going to continue with our curriculum revisions. We have, over the past year, we have approved 41 new curriculum. We're hoping to keep up at a similar pace. We are planning to pilot some new integrated language arts materials next year in kindergarten through 1st grade. We are looking at a new related arts program at the middle school. And we are currently working on integrating some leveled social studies materials in grades kindergarten, in grades 3 through 5. Oops. Skipped ahead. Sorry about
Okay, in special education, just to extend a little bit beyond instruction and curriculum. Our current special education enrollment is a little bit more than 1,000 students. However, that represents about 19% of our district. And as you can see here, one of the things that we were recently cited for in a 2014-15 compliance report by the federal government was the fact that we should be somewhere around 14 to 15% students identified. Because we are identifying at such a rapid rate children eligible for special education, we're also seeing a great increase in the number of our special education teachers. For instance, 2 years ago, we had to hire 4 unbudgeted special education teachers. Last year, we had to hire 3 unbudgeted special education teachers. So one of the main problems that we're focusing on right now in special education is first and foremost the fact that we have a rising number of students being made eligible for special education services. Again, 19% of the students in the district are eligible for special services. That number should be somewhere around 15%. But our preschool population, right now we have about 90 students in that. Our school-age population, about 934. We have about 134 students receiving speech and language services only. And currently, we have about 82 students that are being educated in a private out-of-district school. That number is increasing as we speak. For some reason, we're getting a high number of students moving into the borough who are currently in a private out-of-district placement. When a situation like that occurs, you have to provide them an equal IEP. You'll see on some of the upcoming agendas, we had 2 or 3 students that have just moved in that were currently in a private out-of-district placement. We then now have to put them in a private out-of-district placement. Back to preschool. Right now, we currently have 8 classrooms. They are full. 3 of them are full-day intensive programs. 2 of them are full-day integrated programs, and we have 6 half-day integrated programs. We're probably going to have to hire an additional teacher as a long-term sub sometime in February or March just because of the rising number of students that are going into our preschool population. Currently, we have about 90 students in preschool, but we have about 30 students that we still have to evaluate by the end of this school year. And the way the law works is you have to evaluate a preschool child so that they're eligible to start services on the day they turn 3 years of age. So with our collaboration with what is called early intervention services, we've identified potentially 30 more children that we may have to place in our programs. So that's another area of concern that we're really focusing on in special education. As I mentioned earlier, we did receive our 2014-15 compliance report, and Dr. Shediak mentioned graduation rate. One of the things that we are penalized for by the state government, but they are being forced to do so by the federal government, is in special education, if a child requires that they should be educated until the age of 21, that's what you do. It's required by federal as well as state regulations. Unfortunately, the graduation formula they use is a cohort formula, and they actually penalize you for children that do not graduate after 4 years in a high school. So those kids that are educated until they're 21, we actually get penalized in our graduation rate. And just as Dr. Shediak said, those children that are exempt from passing the park, we are penalized for that as well as in our graduation rate. So not only did that affect us in CUSAC, it affected us in our federal compliance report too. Obviously, our proficiency on state standardized testing was below compliance level for all of our students with special needs. That's why we have implemented several different types of programs. More importantly, putting kids in the least restrictive environment to increase their student achievement scores. And then finally, when it comes to students in the least restrictive environment, as many of you know, particularly our board members, we eliminated one self-contained program from our continuum. And we have made a conscious effort of moving kids up within that continuum because we were cited as well on our compliance report for having far too many kids in self-contained classrooms. We have corrected that problem this year, but in 14-15, that was something that we were cited for. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. DeAndrea.
There is a handout with all the financial information, which is not part of the actual presentation, so anybody wishes to see the actual numbers, there is a handout. On the financial end of things, the district needs to focus on state funding. Obviously, one of the biggest concerns that not only Sayreville faces, but many districts in the state, is that the state has not provided additional funding. They provide us with increased mandates of things we must implement, but they don't bring us the money to implement those things. So it's been some increase, but not much at all. Obviously, tax levy. As a board, as the business administrator, we're always conscious of how much we're impacting the taxpayer. Last year, in order to have the balanced budget, we went above the 2% requirement, which was allowed because we had available funds in the budget system to do those items. So we were able to do that, but again, the board always tries to do their best to stay within the 2% requirement of the tax levy. Miscellaneous revenue. We've been fortunate. We've been seeing an increase in miscellaneous revenue. We're meeting at a meeting or two ago. We discussed with the board having an advertising consultant come on to help us see ways that we can advertise and bring revenue. We've expanded upon our adult school program. We now call it the Integrated Preschool Program and a Little Stars Program. We have additional revenues coming through those areas. So we're doing our part, looking at other avenues of trying to get revenue to come in. Health benefits or health insurance. It's probably one of the biggest driving concerns for any Board of Education and any corporate entity. We are seeing increasing insurance costs. Last year, we were around 20% increase on roughly a $10 million premium. So it's not hard to see why a $2 million hit on a budget would have such a drastic impact when a 2% tax increase is only allowing you to go up by $1.1 or $1.2 million. So most of our resources are absorbed on a yearly basis by health insurance. Through the efforts of Mr. McEnone and the board, we've now established a health insurance committee who are going to actually meet and try to understand and look at a better way to control our health insurance costs. So we're already taking the initiative at setting up a committee and looking at those things so that we can control it. Fund balance. Fund balance is this year for the 15-16, we used $3.5 million of our fund balance, and the best way to look at it is if you had a savings account, we took $3.5 million out of our savings account so we could operate the school district. We're hopeful by the end of the year we can replenish a good portion of that $3.5 million. But on a yearly basis, that number has been diminishing, and that number helps control the tax impact. Capital reserve, money that we have set aside over the years for building improvements. 2 years ago, we had a little over $2 million. Right now, we're down to $49,000. We just got some additional money in from state grants that helps build that up, and the audit is going to reveal there's slightly more money. But at one point in time, we had $2 million to do capital projects that were not being supported by the budget, but were being supported through reserves that we established. And if we don't establish those reserves, you may have to look to alternate sources of possibly a referendum to do the needed work that's required. For anyone that was here, we did a capital projects budget that had close to $6 million in projects. So we have to figure out a way to fund those. And then obviously the last one, we're seeing an overcrowding issue going on in the district. We need to start addressing the overcrowding. There were many developments approved in town. those developments are starting to bring children into the building, where class sizes are growing. So we have to figure out a way to first house the students so we're able to educate them. Again, possible referendum and things of that nature may have to be looked at to incorporate funding all of those different sources. Again, if the figures, there's a separate spreadsheet. I didn't want to get into all the figures, but that summarizes how we are at the financial constraints.
Are there any questions on the board before we get into the technology segment of it so far about the budget or the testing? Mr. Sayak?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions on special ed. Dr. Labby, you had indicated that there was a report that was issued that indicated that we had too many students in self-contained. Can
Correct.
we get a copy of that report? Because I
Sure.
don't think I've ever seen that. And I'm just curious what other recommendations were in there. My other question, also along that same line, I know we're moving more students along the spectrum from self-contained into the least restrictive environment. How is that working from a staff perspective in terms of, professional development? To me, if we've got that large an opportunity where we're being cited by the state in terms of the number that we have in self-contained, I'm thinking that may be a sea change for our staff in terms of now having those students brought into a more least restrictive environment.
The transition has had some minor bumps, but overall, the transition has gone well. There have been some students who had a difficult time making that transition that were in our mild language and learning disability self-contained program. But our staff has done an amazing job of working very closely with those individuals to meet their diverse needs. Overall, I think as a district, we need to improve the way we team teach, how our teachers an in-class resource center, and that's a program in which general and special education teachers are in the general education setting, team teaching all the students in that classroom. I think we need to improve in that area, but that's not uncommon to any district in the state or even in the country. That's something that districts can always improve upon. But I do think that our teachers do a very good job of it here in Sayreville. In our pull-out resource centers, we need to provide our teachers with the tools that they need to provide alternative programs to our students. For instance, we purchased in our pull-out resource centers for all kindergarten through sixth grade an alternative literacy development program called Project Read. So we need to provide our teachers with the tools to utilize in pull-out resource center, as well as training on how to use those tools.
Is there anything from a professional development standpoint that we should be budgeting for next year? Are you addressing that?
No, I mean, the greatest thing that we could have done was creating Sayreville University and hiring Shannon Johnson. She's done an amazing job. She's not only developing our district-wide in-service days, but she's got a program that focuses on professionally developing our non-tenured staff, as well as a program that focuses on initiatives. For instance, a month ago, she had all of our pull-out resource center teachers in for a half-day of training on using Project Read. And that's the program, that's the vehicle that we're going to use moving forward to professionally develop all of our staff. Many of our teachers put in for professional days, and we pay them for professional days. As you can see on the agenda today, there are many professional days being recommended for you to approve. I think our teachers do a great job of taking advantage of those great workshops that are out there. And as you can see, a good portion of them deal with educating children with special needs, particularly educating them in the general education setting. So utilizing some of those methods as well as really taking advantage of Sayreville University, I think we're going to be able to sufficiently meet the needs of our special educators as well as our general educators working with our students with disabilities.
And is it fair to say that most of the challenges that we've seen are a result of the transition itself, and that the following year will be easier now that we've got more of them into a least restrictive environment, or heading towards a least restrictive environment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime you change anything, there is going to be a period of time where you have some wrinkles to iron out within that transition. But I think as a district, making this change, and this is a change that I've implemented in a couple of other districts, I think that we've managed those changes quite well here. And that speaks volumes about the staff here.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions? I just want to make one comment about the long-awaited park results. I know if you've been following, there was A lot of controversy, a lot of opting out, a lot of students that didn't take the test seriously. And we did quite well. In most areas, we exceeded the state average, and in almost all areas, the national average. And I think, we can credit that to what's happening in our classrooms. So we did quite well compared to what we thought we would do. And then if you were listening to the news last week, the President of the United States has redlined the No Child Left Behind program, de-emphasized the Common Core, and said that the state should determine what the requirement should be for education. And the state has already said we're not following the Common Core, so now what happens with the park? Very good question. So we're standing by to see, but we do know that the park is a graduation requirement, and some of our students have met that requirement by the results on this park. So it was really a good news thing versus what was leading up to what we anticipated. So bring that to our attention. Okay.
Mr.
Technology.
Glockman-White.
Thank you. With technology programs this year, much of the goals of the technology department focused on efficiency systems to aid and assist our principals, curricular departments, business departments, human resources, as well as focusing on improving communications technologies throughout the district. To that end, some of the projects that technology has completed in cooperation with the other departments and schools around the district have included our new registration system, Encore system, which Dr. Shediak had already mentioned, school messenger and secure document delivery. I'm sure many parents here tonight have received their progress reports or report cards through secure document delivery recently. ASOP deployment for substitutes within the district. We moved our budget and payroll systems with Mr. DeAndrea over to a cloud hosting system to make sure that they are always on so that everyone can always get paid. New technology work order system to streamline how technology repairs are handled throughout the district. A staff self-service portal so that if you are home in the summer on break and you need your password reset because you forgot it or it expired, you can now do that without having to contact someone in technology. Desktop as a service pilot, a virtual desktop pilot program, which we recently launched to about 50 members of the district. New district website, new on-site data backup system to make sure that our data is secure and that we don't lose anything due to a system failure. Also have a new off-site disaster recovery system for our core systems so that if anything does happen to any of our internal infrastructure technology, another hurricane, massive power failure, something of that, we can spool up our core systems at another site. Reduction in printer toner purchases this year. Child study team and administrative laptops and docking stations to help some of our staff members that float to various buildings in the district be more mobile and technology friendly. Chromebook conversions of old PCs. This is something we are piloting at the middle school and at Arlett School this year and something we hope to continue next year. Basically taking some of our older laptops and desktops that have been shelved and put into closets that are no longer viable as Windows machines, and for a very small one-time cost, converting them into usable Chromebooks that members of the district can take and utilize in the classrooms. Expansion of district internet bandwidth to make sure that all of these online services as well as online testing can be supported. New special services software and portal deployment. Dr. Levy, I believe that just rolled out recently for our special services parents. And a new education-focused web filter, which we are constantly developing. Anytime there's a new web filter, there is sites that we have to uncover that should be in the classrooms, but we are looking to move more towards educational content instead of filters that were focused towards business. Continuing projects for the remainder of this year, along with general technology support and needs. Desktop power management will be rolling out shortly. It's a project that we've worked on with business and the maintenance department to reduce our electrical needs for older desktop computers. District and school-based mobile apps, which should be rolling out very shortly. Very similar to what the high schools had in place, will now be available for the district and for the other schools within the district. Continued work on interactive devices within the classroom, smart boards, smart projectors, things of that nature. Live streaming services, something we are hoping to push out at our district level, and including one of our elementary schools is looking to pilot that this year. human resource management software, and ASOP enhancements to continue some of the programs that we've already put in place and streamline and move towards paperless systems for some of our internal business practices. Next year, the hope of the technology department, with support of the board, is to focus on our end user devices, our classroom devices for students and teachers, to make sure while we're improving the back-end infrastructure and the process and procedures that are in place with technology, that we don't fall behind in what's actually going on in the classrooms. To that end, we're looking for some security upgrades. We're looking to expand the virtual desktop program. We are hopeful that we can deploy a new phone system for security within the district, a secondary internet and intranet connection, upgrading some of our infrastructure to support what's going on in the classrooms, continued work on interactive devices, additional mobile device deployment, and off-site backup to supplement our on-site backup, mobile device and cloud management to support some of our technologies to allow teachers to greater utilize Chromebooks and PCs in the district, and a continuation of the conversion of old PCs into usable Chromebooks. I believe Dr. Shediak also mentioned within her presentation a data warehouse to support research and analytics of data of student assessments that are coming in.
Anybody have any questions about technology? Mr. Sayer.
Just one, I guess, a comment or a question. With regard to our budgeted investment for next year, what's proposed? When I was here for Back to School for Legislators Day, some of the students had commented that they have difficulty getting on the Wi-Fi in this building. And I have personal experience with having difficulty getting on the Wi-Fi in this building. Is that part of what's planned in the budget next year, or is that a separate issue?
I believe what I would actually suggest for that, Mr. Sayak, is that we need to implement some sort of training program for the students as well as anyone else that comes into the district. The Wi-Fi itself is functional, but there is a process to logging in. And when I have gone out and spoken to students, particularly in the middle school and the high school, once it's explained to them,
They get it.
they're usually good to go. Unfortunately, a lot of times with technology, with small technology staff, the technicians aren't educators. They don't have a lot of direct interaction with the students. Administratively, the technology department is limited to a very small group, so getting out to every student in the district is difficult to explain that. So my hope, and I've discussed it with Ms. Johnson, is that we can start working to turnkey some of this training to our teachers so that they can in turn bring it to the students.
Okay. And just in general, I really want to commend you what you've done in your time here as Director of Technology. I think we've come a long way. There's been a lot of great progress. And I really, in terms of an overall uptime, I'm sure you track that as a metric, but I've heard great things in terms of the overall reliability of our network, and I think we've seen some improvement over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. 10 years ago, we were in the Stone Age in technology and not even having a really viable website. And now we're in the 21st century. Talking about kids getting on Wi-Fi was not a discussion a couple of years ago.
Sure.
The applications that we have now, there's apps. I think that just the portal, to be able to access your kids' grades on a smart device, I wish I would have had that ability when my kids were in the district. Everything that we've done, technology, wireless buildings, things that, weren't heard of 10 years ago. And I directly contribute a lot to you making that happen, and everything that we've done here, and everything works. I've never had a problem getting on. And just the emails and the way we transitioned, very, very smooth, and it just speaks of your leadership in this area. So.
Thank you. It's certainly a team effort with the administrators, the principals, the teachers, and the technical staff in the district. It's a large district with a lot of technology, and it takes a lot of people to make that function, and support from the board.
Well, it takes a
is
good leader to
certainly
make it
always
happen.
thankful.
Thank you.
And that list of accomplishments, it was actually like 3 slides, and I told him that he had to condense it to 1.
He's a good briefer as well.
Yeah.
Okay, good evening, everyone. This is for Human Resources, Operations, and Compliance. First thing we want to take a look at is our overall student enrollment. Looked at last year, 14-15, and our current enrollment as of 11/30/15. You can see it appears that we might be down a little, but as you can see with the pre-K numbers, and as Dr. Labby mentioned, there are about 30 other pre-K students, which would actually make the number higher. So I put the actual number from 11:30 and then in parentheses where we anticipate it may go. I put this report here because I think it's one of the most important things to see with enrollment. As you look, it shows the number of students by grade and school from June 30th, 9:30, 10:30, and 11:30. And what I want to point out is, for example, in Arlith, you can see in June, the end of June, it was 124. Now it's at 132. In grade 1, you see growth. Grade 2, you see growth. In Eisenhower, if you look, you'll see it was at 112 at the end of June. We're now at 140. So the reason I'm showing these numbers is that you can see what that trend does and what does that mean for personnel. When you have increasing numbers of students, obviously, you may need additional staff. You may need paras. For example, on the agenda today, on the addendum, we have 2 part-time paras at Wilson, 1 for kindergarten and 1 for the pull-out resource due to increasing enrollment. This shows the rising enrollment as well in the SUES and other schools. Want to take a look at the staffing. The 14-15 numbers are from the personnel budget presentation last spring, and these are the staff numbers as it stands now. You'll see a slight increase in the teachers that we talked about before in terms of the special ed teachers, the ESL teacher, and the elementary PE teacher. As we look forward, there's anticipated new positions. High school MD special education teacher, SUES project before teacher, SUES project before art teacher, SUES guidance counselor. Then there's possible new positions we're not sure about right now. Elementary and upper elementary staff, and the increase in enrollment continues. And things to consider. Need to begin exploring building another elementary school. Cost approximately $2 to $3 million to staff a new building. 15-16 initiatives, personnel. We're looking at electronic document submission. This is for the onboarding of new staff, as well as we're looking to do this for substitutes. The substitutes and new staff already use ApplyTrack, and then they have to come in and pick up paperwork to fill out and go back and forth. Sometimes for substitutes, they'll come, pick out the paperwork, someone will interview them, and they won't bring the paperwork back, so they can't be hired. So we're in the process now of putting it all into one file. Subs, when they're interested, apply, fill out the paperwork, and then we'll make appointments for them to come in to be finalized and interviewed. Job descriptions. We're going to be working this year on updating the job descriptions, revising and modifying them. Like last year, where all staff was able to get contracts, this year, at the end of the year, we hope for most staff to be able to get job descriptions. They'll sign off as long with the contract, so everyone's clear in terms of what the expectations are. Webpage, we're going to be creating an HR webpage, looking at some of the new laws, information, in addition to just general information regarding HR. One thing in particular is with FMLA, that is complicated and a lot of people need assistance with. We want to be able to put information in one spot where everyone knows where the forms are, what's expected. In addition, I'm going to be working with the nurses on a health and safety webpage, all the sports information as well as quarterly information about flu season, et cetera. Those are 2 web pages that we're trying to get in place this year. Additionally, we're going to look at an updated position control. The system that we have that we use for the budget as well as for personnel primarily tracks personnel in terms of tracking people. We're looking to expand the system to actually really track positions. That way we can tie them a lot closer to the budget in terms of budgeted, unbudgeted, because it's looking at vacant positions. I've already spoken with the owner of the system we have, and we'll be meeting with him right after the holiday to see the capabilities of that system, possible upgrades, or another way to enhance our personnel management system. Operations, we instituted the central registration with InfoSnap. That also entailed going through all of the registration documents, the residency documents, putting that process in place. The substitute call-out with ASOP, we've gotten most of that in place at this level. We're going to continue with the enhancements to add more with that. And for compliance, in the past for EpiPens, anytime a student that needed an EpiPen to go on any type of activity, they took their own EpiPen with them. But now, in the summer, there was a new law that said that people had to be trained to identify a student who was going into shock that had never had a reaction before. And for that end, any athletic or extracurricular activity or class trip, someone has to be designated an EpiPen delegate who can recognize symptoms of someone who never experienced it before and administer aid. So we've been training people throughout the course of the year to ensure that we've had compliance. Dr. Shediak included EpiPen delegates on field trips so that we know someone is there. It has had an impact in terms of the cost of EpiPens, because you may have in the high school 5 or 6 activities going out from the building at once, but every activity has to have an EpiPen and a delegate with them. For mandatory training, the state has 16 required modules or areas that have to be covered every year, ensuring that all of our staff, all of our volunteers are trained effectively has been another goal. We've been trying to streamline it a little bit this year. There's 16 areas. We have 6 of them being completed on a computer module, and then I've created PowerPoints that will be distributed for the other areas in order to kind of lessen the computer load. We're also going to be extending this in a broader way to our substitutes. ASOP contains all of our substitutes' web email addresses, so we're creating a letter for all of our substitutes, directing them to General Compliance Network to complete all of the HIB training so that everyone in any capacity will be trained effectively. One other thing that I just wanted to mention for compliance, as you know, during the course of this year, we had the unannounced drills. This year, I've put together a team to update our safety, security, and crisis plan. There's a 91 item checklist created by the NJDOE, as well as Homeland Security and FEMA, and we will be revising the overall security plan in compliance with those items.
Any questions for Mrs.
I guess the only comment I would make, and this is great stuff, and I know that you've also had some other challenges from a investigation perspective over the last school year, which you had to deal with. As we go forward into the next year with staff morale being one of our goals for the district, maybe for the next State of the State, there's a way we can capture some of the lighter moments in the district amongst our staff and kind of highlight the staff morale piece and the times when our staff really come together with either some photos, a video, whatever.
Okay, all right. Thank you, will do.
Anything else?
Anyone else?
Any questions about anything before I open up the public?
Thank you.
At this time, open up the public for any questions about the presentation you just seen. I will open it up for the public again several times this evening if any other questions before this board. Anybody have any questions on the data that was just shown? This briefing will be on the website tomorrow, is that correct?
And it'll be emailed home tomorrow morning.
Okay, very good. Any questions? Seeing none, okay, we'll have Ms. Jenkins' presentation.
And we also have another very, very special presentation.
I was told I'm under the gun here.
Michelle Jenkins from our Food Services Program has prepared a great presentation for you this evening to outline how much enhanced that program with the help of our wonderful staff. So at the conclusion of her presentation, Mr. DeAndre will join her to go over some of the figures for this year as well as previous years. Michelle?
Now, is this on and this on? Sure. I don't know. I'm not really sure. Okay. I don't know if I can do all this stuff at once. So, can you guys hear me if I speak into this? Yeah. Yes. Okay. Will it do some kind of interactive thing if I don't know what to do? Okay. All right. And if you guys can hear me okay? Mm-hmm. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shelley Jenkins, and I am the director here at Sayreville Schools for the Food Services Department. I'm also a registered dietitian. Tonight's presentation, School Nutrition, Team Spirit, Challenging Changes, is going to include a brief overview of school nutrition and how we are dealing with these changes. And I'll also be talking to you about some of the accomplishments that we've done over this past year, as well as things that we were working on and we are continuing to work on throughout the school year. After that, as Dr. Labby said, Mr. DeAndrea will go through the financial aspect of the food service department. Before I get started, I would like to say thank you to my staff. Some of them are here tonight for moral support, so thank you guys for coming. More importantly, I want to thank them for all their hard work and effort that they put in to prepare and serve the meals to the kids every day in our school district on a daily basis. It's truly a team effort, and without them, I wouldn't be able to get my job done. So if everyone could give them a round of applause, that would be... So thanks, guys. I've been working here at Sayreville for over 20 years, and there has been a lot of drastic changes through the school meal program. But ultimately, the goals and objectives of the program have not changed. The mission is good nutrition. And the program objectives are to provide well-balanced meals and snacks to the kids in order to promote sound eating habits, foster good health, and academic achievements. Here in our district, we do provide the breakfast program as well as the lunch program. School breakfast, or breakfast in general, is the most important meal of the day. And the school breakfast in all schools that offer them throughout the district provide a quarter of the recommended dietary allowances for school kids, and they follow the American Dietary Guidelines. The school lunch program is also mandated by the state, or we also have that program in, and that provides about a third of the recommended dietary allowances. And basically, this is also follows the dietary guidelines, and it meets, the new regs ask that it meet the recommendations of more whole grains, more fruits and vegetables, lower dairy, lower fat intakes, lower sodium intakes, and each menu is grade-specific for calories. Some key points of information that we like to give our staff to disseminate through to our parents, and we actually put some of this information on the website, was that we do get the message out there for everyone to know that we do serve both breakfasts and lunches in all our schools in the district. The meal prices are usually put on the menu as well as the website, and there's no change from last year to this year for the prices of the meals. What's new with the new regulations is that the students must take at least a half a cup of portion of a fruit or a vegetable in order for us to claim it as a meal. Free and reduced applications must be filled out every year. We typically have a problem with that. There's a 30-day grace period from the start of the school year, and then once that grace period ends, the status will no longer be taken into consideration from the previous year. So we encourage parents and guardians to fill those applications out every year. What's new this year is that we were very fortunate to have Mike Goranowitz and Eric Locke-Malloy get our free and reduced application online so that parents have the ability to access it online through a link, and it gets processed through our POS system. Also, we offer 3 meal payment options. Obviously, cash is acceptable, checks are acceptable, and we have an online payment system for a nominal fee through our My School Bucks program. We also strongly encourage all parents to participate in, sign up for My School Bucks because they can track their own child's meal transactions and see if their account balances are low. Some of the accomplishments over the last school year is that we did, thanks to Dr. Labby, we were able to get a wellness committee established, which was mandated by Child Nutrition. It was very active throughout the year. Because of the new meal regs, we had to redevelop a wellness policy based on all of those new regulations, and it was adopted by our Policy and Procedures Committee. At the end of the school year, we also had to evaluate the wellness policy and see how well we did with all of that, and that was discussed and completed with our committee. Some areas that we are making strides is we're always consistently offering nutrition education on all the new meal regulations as much as we can. Some of the ways that we are doing this is providing signage at on our tray lines, talking to the kids as much as we can, putting signs like this also on the tray line and also on the internet, off versus serve, where the students must take 3 or 4 components depending on what meal we're served, but one of those always has to be a fruit or a vegetable. Another area that, I actually spoke to the Samsel Families Unite Night. I did a portion on good nutrition as part of a workshop with that program, so that was very well received. And we provided some delicious cookies, which you guys are more than happy to take for that as well. And all of our staff, or a good portion of our staff, tried to attend some back-to-school nights where all the previous information that I just talked about, as far as key points of interest, were given out. Information was given out to all of those, all of the parents that attended those back-to-school nights. Another area that we're making stride is that we're always trying to increase lunch, breakfast and/or lunch participation. I just have some preliminary numbers for participation. Typically, when we first start school, the lunch counts are on the smaller side. They typically are in the lower 30s or lower 40s, upper 30s. And as we progress into the school district, you'll see in October, the numbers rose to upper 40s and over 50 in some of the schools. So that's kind of been the basic trend. November, actually, I just completed the November report, and our participation rate was hovering around the 47 percentile range. So we're still kind of consistently staying within that range, which is great. Other things that we were trying to do is we're offering some theme days. Last year, we did a Chinese New Year celebration where we offered a really nice Asian menu and had the food in takeout containers for the kids. We decorated the cafeteria, and it was very well received. We did it district-wide. We also did a Cinco de Mayo day. Actually, this menu is, I think, the menu that I gave the board because it's got crumb cake on it. But anyway, we did a similar menu where we offered a Mexican fiesta throughout the district. The cafeteria was also decorated, and some of my staff actually wore costumes and had sombreros. Some had fake mustaches, so it was very well received, and the kids seemed to enjoy it. Another area is, after speaking to the kids last year, a lot of them were getting tired of the square pizza, so the wedge became the new square, and this year we're actually offering wedge pizza on Fridays instead of the square pizza, and the kids seem to be receiving that very well as well. Last year, if you remember, we talked about trying to increase some participation by expanding some menu options, and one of the areas was the cold food section. And what we did was, Arlith School had a program that kind of incorporated a lot of, actually the whole school. And Mr. Preston was kind enough to put me in the segment where we offered a taste testing session with the staff at Arlith School, my staff at Arlith School, to come in and give a sampling of all these different items. And we had a contest, and the kids voted for their favorite new lunch. We kind of had fun, cute names for, it was like Pete Pizza or something like that. It turned out that the Fiesta was still popular, so was the bagel lunch. But what ended up coming in second and third was, or third and fourth rather, was the sun butter and jelly sandwich, which was the twist on peanut butter. It's a peanut-free item made with sunflower seeds, and the yogurt fruit and cheese platter. So we now incorporate that on the menu more often. Let me go back. Some of the other things that we did, and I kind of have it highlighted as, but on the making strides, but the middle school and Arlith School actually planted a garden, and the middle school harvested a few crops. They got some tomatoes and peppers, and we were able to make some salsa. I think I might have even given you some of that stuff in the beginning of this school year. And they also planted watermelon. So we're trying to take advantage of their crops as well as any herbs and incorporate it in our meals, which is kind of nice to show and menu that for the students and the families to know that that's what we're utilizing with our foods. Some of the areas that we need improvement, I'm also going to talk about breakfast in the classroom later. I'm trying to kind of move this along a little bit. Areas that need improvement is that we do have candy as fundraiser sales, and that can be an exception to the rule as far as like the wellness policy goes. But typically, candy cannot be served during the school hours, most importantly in the cafeteria. So that's an area where we kind of need to move on and get the message out there. And food allergies, as Tamika said, there's a lot of mandates. We do have a lot of students with food allergies. We are fortunate enough, and actually technology was very gracious, to take the information from the emergency cards of the students that had allergies, get that imported or exported, I'm not sure of the terminology that is the official terminology of that, and put it into our NutriKid system so that the students that have those severe allergies, as they come through the tray line, it's highlighted under the notes section, and we are aware of who is allergic to certain things. And it also stated if they have an EpiPen, which would indicate that they have a pretty severe allergic reaction to those foods. I am trying to work pretty closely with the nurses to make sure that we get as much information disseminated on the foods that we serve so that it's posted on the website, and that's the other part of needing improvement, is to get a lot more of the stuff on the website so that parents, if they do need that information, they can access it. What's cooking for this school year? We were really fortunate enough to be a part of the Department of Defense, where our commodities that we get on a monthly basis, we were told that we can allocate more money towards the purchase of fruits and vegetables. And instead of getting those fruits and vegetables delivered on a monthly basis, we were able to get that delivered on a weekly basis. So we had more access to fruits and vegetables, which was very well received this school year. And I'm hoping to take advantage of that more in the years to come. We also, this new school year, there's a lot of mandated training standards, but all food service personnel has to be trained on all food service aspects of the program. We are very fortunate that there's tons of webinars, free webinars offered through Child Nutrition and/or the School Nutrition Association, so we can take advantage of those things. There's PowerPoint presentations available. Working with, again, Shannon Johnson, I was able to bring my staff in. They're part of the staff development day, and they could get their hours of training in. I also have to log them. Being a registered dietitian, I have to also maintain a certain number of credits to stay registered, so there's no problem for me maintaining those professional standards. And then my managers and cooks actually attend webinars and/or training sessions with me as well. The third thing that I really want to talk about is the breakfast in the classroom. We, as a committee last year on the Wellness Committee and also Nutrition Committee, I guess you would say, we talked about ways of generating some additional revenue. And breakfast in the classroom kept coming up. I attended a seminar in March and kind of got bombarded by the Dairy Council to see if we could try to pilot breakfast in the classroom at one of our schools. Mr. Preston was very willing to decide to take on that project with me. Last year, we investigated with the Dairy Council different options on how to do that. Obviously, I didn't want to pay a lot of money. We were wondering how it was going to be paid for to get the equipment needed to do all of this stuff. The Dairy Council was kind enough with grant money to give us equipment. The milk company was able to give us an additional milk cooler. Not saying that it wasn't a lot of work, but we actually implemented it in this past November 10th. And what the Dairy Council did was they provided, I feel like I'm the stewardess. They provided coolers, one for every classroom, got breakfast. And basically, each classroom gets a cart. They have like a little luggage tag on the cart that is designated for the specific classroom. All the kids that are eligible for free and reduced meals get a breakfast. Mr. Preston developed a Google document, whereas anybody that wants to purchase a breakfast can do so and pre-order that. My staff at Arlitt School gets the breakfast together in the morning. We have to provide them with a choice of milk, so there's chocolate milk and/or white milk together for them. We also have to provide them with additional fruit, so that's also in the basket. And basically, what they get, kind of a pre-bagged breakfast, a cold cereal or muffins, and the kids, I guess when the teachers come in the morning, they grab their carts, take their kids to their classroom, the kids take their breakfasts. We sit down, they're very good at multitasking apparently, because Mr. Preston says they take their breakfast, they eat their breakfast, the attendance is being taken, they do some to-do work, they clean up their breakfast, and they're ready to go. It seems to be very well received. Preliminary numbers from November, we actually, the participation went from 9% to 27%. And the revenue that we get from each breakfast is pretty substantial. So there's a potential to generate revenue, and my goal is that we can roll it out to the other elementary schools, possibly next school year. And last but not least, we are expecting an administrative review with child nutrition this year. It's pretty intensive. Emilio, myself, and my secretary have been attending webinars and trying to get ourselves together for all of this, when this review is coming. There's a lot of off-site as well as on-site stuff that needs to be prepared for this review. I'm working very hard with my staff to make sure that we're prepared when they come. And we will keep you posted. I think it's going to be happening at the end of February. They will probably be visiting 2 schools. We probably will know which 2 schools, so I'll basically focus on those 2 schools once I know them. But I'm pretty confident that we'll be okay with that and be successful with the review. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, wait, now, Mr. DeAndrea, unless you have questions for me, he's going to talk about the financial part.
Yes, Shelley, I do
Yes.
have a question. As a teacher, my concern was always the food garbage in the classroom, which they weren't supposed to bring in, but inevitably, there would be a banana peel or the remains of somebody's tuna sandwich that would stink up my room for the rest of the day. So my question is, after the kids have their breakfast, is the garbage bagged and removed immediately?
Yes, what they do is they, actually, the kids put all of this stuff out. We kind of, Mr. Preston, we thought this through pretty thoroughly. Mr. Preston has wipes in every classroom, so the kids wipe down their desks so they're sanitized, because we had some issues with allergies possible and cross-contamination. So they do that. The kids actually put all their garbage back in that little bag, and then it gets put in a garbage can outside the door. I have not, probably at the end of January, because I'll have a little bit more numbers, we'll have a meeting again to see if there's any problems. We're tweaking this along the way. Like I said, it's a pilot. It was a little bit more labor-intensive than we thought. When we visited some of the schools, everybody was like, oh, yeah, you just put the breakfast in, it goes to the kids eat it, it's no big deal. But it's a lot more work. It involves a lot more equipment, like refrigeration, like we were hounding down our milk company. We don't pay for those milk coolers, but if they're not around, then we would have to purchase more equipment. It involves a little bit more, but ultimately, if the kids are eating and they're ready to learn, it would be great if you can consolidate and put numbers together and you see possibly increase in scores. I don't know if that could ever be, but it looks like technology can work wonders with all this stuff. It's amazing. But, that would really be a great direct link to see that, because there are a lot of kids that go to school and they don't eat, whether it's just because they're in a rush, but having that opportunity. And these kids don't have to even take part in the program. They can bring in stuff. It doesn't seem to affect their day. I know the governor actually signed a waiver stating that it's actually part of instructional time to have breakfast in the classroom. So, they're really trying to push it. I don't think they want to lose funding for it, and I think that they feel that it's a worthwhile cause to have kids at least fed and not going to the nurse's station or going to the nurses because their bellies hurt because they didn't eat anything.
I don't doubt that. My question was just, again, the
Yeah,
cleanup.
It seems to be fine. I think
If anything's left around, then we have to pay the exterminators, so we got to look at it from that direction,
like I
too.
said, so far so good. I think it's just, I think certain there's a certain core group of kids that actually, I guess, they're little, I don't know, like you get the line leader. I mean, I think there's some kids that just get told that they go down there, they disseminate the breakfast, they all clean up and they go. I'm not saying it might cause a problem in other schools. I think elementary schools is kind of more of a key place I would focus on. The upper elementary and middle school or high school, I wouldn't consider doing that, although they do run those kinds of programs throughout other districts that have bigger schools. But again, this method may not work in Wilson School because of the stairs. There's a lot of avenues to look at before we would even implement it, down the road. But it's definitely something that I was happy Mr. Preston was willing to take on the project, and it seems to be working. But we
Okay,
will
thank you.
evaluate it prior to.
Mr. Sack? you have a question?
First of all, congratulations on the breakfast program. I view that one as a game changer. It's a revenue generator for us. It helps the cafeteria program. It allows the kids to be fed in the morning. It's going to help with student achievement, and research shows it fights childhood obesity as well. So that's a win across the board. When you and by the way, I'm glad that you brought your staff out
I
as
know, I
well,
had to.
and I'm guessing they volunteered for that. So that also sends
I told them
a message I
received.
received. With regard to the lunch program, I know you set our participation rates at about 41%. Have you looked at other districts around us? Are we basically on par? Are we higher? Are we lower?
Well, 41% was more in September. We were actually hovering in the 47 percentile range, and honestly, that's pretty good. Our elementary schools are in the upper 40s, some of them were over 50. Typically, middle schools and high schools tend to be in like the 45 percentile range, which isn't bad, because there's the snack, we offer the snacks as well. Ultimately, what I can say is that more of the kids that are eligible for free and reduced meals are taking part into our meal program. So we are getting a larger reimbursement rate back in general. Like I think a while back, I mentioned we got the 6-cent review to get an extra 6 cents. We had to follow all those compliance. Well, that has to be done again. But we also now get an additional 2 cents because 60% of our free and reduced kids take advantage of our meals. So we don't have 60% free and reduced in the district, but 60% of what we have eligible are taking advantage of the program. So we
Now,
get an extra 2 cents.
Now, from the lunch perspective, I saw at a conference that I went to, Subway, and I asked them for information. I never got any information, which may in and of itself be a red flag. But the way it works is Subway basically would come in here, you would basically own the franchise, it's
Oh,
our
okay.
people, and they would obviously get a portion of the profits because it's a Subway name,
Right.
but it's completely run by us, our rules, our people.
Right.
Have we ever looked at that as a possibility?
We haven't looked at that, and I'm not saying I would be opposed to it. I would wait till child nutrition gets out of the way before I would even investigate that.
Probably a good move.
But a while back, before we even had this food court concept, Subway came in. It was actually, not sure where it was located. It could have been in the ShopRite Mall. I can't remember where it was located. But the man came in, and we used to purchase one of their meals because they are portion controlled. And as long as he met the guidelines, it was fine. The problem is that, and I think that they probably could meet it, the sodium requirements now have been cut, and I'm hoping with any new administration that comes into the White House, maybe we'll stop that, because if you start, obviously salt is an inherited tasted thing, but if we had to eliminate cheese on things because of the sodium content, if anybody's ever tasted low sodium cheese, it's disgusting. So if we had to do that, and our kids love cheese on everything, so if we had to really start to drop back and take away stuff, we're going to start losing some of those kids that we normally would have. So as long as they would meet requirements, I think we could do something.
They indicated to me they would
Yeah.
meet requirements, and this isn't just, it doesn't come in a box. The impression I got was they actually come in with the
provide you the meats and
branding
stuff,
and everything,
yeah.
so it's the marketing allure as well.
I think as long as everything was met, just like we still do Papa John's, and Papa John's went out and bought whole grain crust pizza crust for us, and the lower fat cheese, part skim milk, mozzarella cheese. So because of that, and he can provide me with a nutritional analysis for when child nutrition comes in, as long as that meets all the requirements, we can probably do something like that.
All right. Thank you, and again, great job.
Anybody else on the board? I just want to comment, I think you're doing an exceptional job. I've always given you feedback, considering what you're up against and with all the state rules and mandates. And I remember lunch when I went to high school, you got a couple hot dogs, some french fries, can of Coke, and you're done.
Yeah.
And I know you have one of the harder jobs in the district, feeding potentially thousands of kids a day and making sure the nutrition guidelines. And I always commented on the food that the board gets. The chicken parm is my favorite, and I will argue that it rivals the finest of Italian restaurants, so I always appreciate
Well,
that.
that's
So,
good.
whoever's cooking that,
The lobster ravioli was good tonight, too.
yeah, the lobster ravioli.
And the rose cake's hot.
Nothing against Dr. Labby, the rest of the board, but that's the highlight of my board meetings is coming in.
Well, I'm glad. We aim to please.
Mr. McEnroe, the lobster was.
I know, right?
Well, he got to it first, that's it.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over. Does anybody have any other questions?
Anybody else?
I'm going to turn it over to Mr. DeAndrea.
Now that you've heard all the great news about how the program has functioned and done throughout the year, the more positive thing is the financial numbers also led with it. And I'm just going to go down to the bottom right-hand corner, net profit and loss. 12-13, we lost close to $90,000. 13-14, we had a $15,000 loss. Currently, an unaudited number, because the auditors are finalizing everything, we turned around to a $36,000 profit, which means that within 1 year period, we were able to turn around, generate an additional $51,000. So the program did what it had to do. All of the initiatives were there. You could see daily sales are up. She indicated the school lunch participation numbers are up. Our reimbursement numbers are up. And one of the other factors was we did work together in revamping our staffing, giving them standard hours and working with them in those regards. But the bottom line is all the positive things that happened last year, currently on the unaudited numbers, are showing a $51,000 turnaround. And with no increase in pricing.
We still having any problems with delinquent accounts?
Yes, we definitely still have them.
So it's still an ongoing?
Yes, and we've worked with that. We're trying to minimize the dollar amount that we're allowing the student to put on account.
Right.
We're now actually seeing a report because the POS system can generate a report on any given time as to who is delinquent. But Ms. Jenkins and her department has put in place, the child always has to get a meal, so
Right.
she has things in place for that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? If not, I'll open up for the public, just for any questions on Mrs. Jenkins' presentation on the food services. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll close that portion, and Dr. Labby, hand it back over to you.
Just going to try to fill some time here. I just saw on my phone that Donald Trump is now demanding that all restaurants register high sodium level foods.
Well, we won't be on that list.
I had to slip in, sorry.
Yes, that was a joke, yes.
I'll be here all week, by the way.
Okay, I think we have another presentation, now that I'm looking at the agenda.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Was watching John's eyes. He closed a few times. The poor guy.
Well, it's this time of year, we have a changeover, of board members, and we want to recognize those whose last meeting this evening. I apologize to those board members who have their last meeting tonight, because I promised you that we would be out of here by 8:30 tonight. And I apologize for that happening.
This will be my evaluation on it.
Our first board member departing us is Carl. Buddy, come on up. Before he got on board, he's, I know him for the past 3 years that he served with us. So in honor of Carl, I'm just not going to say anything. That was a joke. I'm here to tell you that he actually does speak. And I know him exactly. But he's thoughtful, he's deliberate, and he's certainly contributed to the decisions the board has made, especially this past year, in lieu of what we had to deal with. And if you really want to have a conversation with Buddy, he's probably one of the most knowledgeable people I know about high school sports. I mean, the games that I go with him with, he always has a lot of knowledge and memories of different things that happen in this district in the sports program. So Buddy, in recognition of your service, we want to present you this plaque. This is one of the nicest plaques that we've given. And it says, in grateful recognition of service to students of the Borough of Sayreville, as a member for the Sayreville Board of Education. So I want to hand this to you for your memories here. And I know that when you run for the Board of Education and then when you sit on the board, it's a lot different when you're out in the audience looking and saying, well, these guys just go to 2 meetings a month and they hit the hammer and that's it. But there's a lot of time, there's a lot of other things that go on, committee meetings, and it's very time consuming. Nobody wants to spend more time with his family. I kind of envy you on that. Again. That thing,
Thank you. I'd just like to say a couple words.
absolutely.
Thank you. I got elected in April of 2012. There was no time limit. Mike likes to put a little time limit on it, and I don't care if I stay here until 12 o'clock. I enjoy it. I'd like to thank the people that elected me back in April of 2012. I enjoyed every minute on the board. Met some great people. When we talk about 2 meetings a month, when we first initially told you that, boy, I'll tell you, it's about just a few more than that, but I enjoyed every aspect of it. I got to meet some great people, some great minds. You know, my wife says to me, you got to miss it? I said, I'll just be able to, instead of sitting in the back room, which I enjoyed the most, now I'll be on this side. I thank the people that I worked with, and also one other thing, when I was elected, I worked with Mr. Tom Machado, who will be joining the board again this year, and this is Helen Bruno McCoy. Thank you.
Any dirt on Buddy, but that's not true for everything I recognize it. This is Jill Trapp. I didn't know Jill either before she ran for the board. She got elected in 2006, a year after I did. I remember having a conversation with her. I was at a tricky tray at the middle school. She always had a very interest in the board, and especially in athletics in town. I mentioned her, why don't you just run for the Board of Education? She kept saying no, 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 no. And I guess eventually I got to her. She ran, and she was elected not once, not twice, but 3 times. And I know when the school elections moved from April to December, or January, November actually, extended your stay another 7 months. So I'll tell you something about Jill Trapp. She's very thoughtful. And she was always the one, I always call her mom, because she's always the one that would stop me and say, did you think about this? And she's very deliberate and a very good person. I always mention, I talk about Jill Trapp, Jill Trapp is good people. She's the type of person that would literally give you the shirt off her back, and it's the kind of people that you want living next door to you. And that's how highly I think of Jill, and she's always been the one to say, okay, now calm down, and now let's listen, and Jill has always been that way. Now, another problem with Jill is that I was relatively a good person before I went to Atlantic City with Jill. Now, don't read anything into that. We went to our first board conference down in Atlantic City, and Jill says, I like to play blackjack. So you want to sit down and play blackjack? And I'm not a big gambler. I said, sure, I'll sit down and play a couple of hands. Usually by 10 o'clock, I'm brushing my teeth and I'm going to bed. So we sat down about 9 o'clock, and I said, I'll play an hour with you, and then we'll be done. So 10 o'clock passed, and she said, another shoe. Okay? So we played another shoe. I said, okay, Jill, 12 o'clock, that's it. I got to get up at 7 o'clock. We got to stop playing. And also, she would always advise me, oh, yeah, don't worry about it. Double down on that. Do this, do that.
It's more chips.
Only chips. She says herself, it's only chips. And make a long story short, 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm telling her this is the last show. And that's and I know that every time I go down to Atlantic City that I got to bring about $1,000 and I got to sit down and I got to play blackjack with Jill, because if I don't do that, I'll be it. So, but the Jill is, she served us well for 10 years, and I always considered, that the community is kind of like a ship, and I think everybody once in a while should take the helm. And Jill certainly did take the helm several times. And I'm going to miss her, because I always could confide in her, and she's a good type of person to run things by and say, Jill, what do you think about this? And Jill will tell you, she has no problem telling you that you're an idiot or something like that. She's very good one for doing that. So I will certainly miss you, Jill. And hopefully I'll have more money at the end of the year, but I'm going to play blackjack. So I just want to thank you very much. Appreciate everything you've done.
Thank you very
If
much.
anything you want to say? So let's pose a picture first. Well, I'm glad he's I don't know what he's doing.
His arms are going to fall off.
I would just like to thank the community and for allowing me to service the community, to service the students and the staff and the parents. And I also want to thank my our best friends that I'll never forget. I love them dearly, and they'll always be a part of my heart. And thank you.
But at the end of the meeting, we're going to have a cake to celebrate Buddy and Jill. That's okay? And I see something in the back there. I'm kind of curious. Those aren't whole wheat cookies, are they? Oh, my goodness. We'll go with the cake.
I'm sorry, can I add one more thing? Sure. I just want to also thank, as I call him, Mr. Wonderful. He's there always to support me from the background. When I thought about not running again the last time or the time before that, he said, oh yes, you are. I think that's just kind of so that I'm not in his hair as much. But now we'll get to spend more time together, and it's all good. So thank you.
Mr. Wonderful, is he back? Oh, there you go. Considering the time, I think Dr. Labby is going to take us very, 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 very quickly through his agenda.
You want to approve the minutes and correspondence?
So move.
That's what I like.
I need a second to approve the minutes. I need roll call.
Mr. Balkin.
I was abstaining on the minutes of December 8th, yes on December 1st.
Mrs. Bacto.
I'm also going to abstain on the minutes of December 8th, and yes on the other.
Mrs. Bloom.
Yes, also abstaining on December 8th since I was not in attendance, and yes on December 1st.
Mr. Brzezinski.
Yes on both.
Mr. Sayak.
Yes.
Mrs. DePinto.
Yes.
Mrs. Trapp.
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Mr. McInerney.
Okay, also, everybody, the work order reports, if anybody has any questions, just pass them on to Mr. DeAndre.
Correct, and we do have the district highlights there for you to read. But for the sake of time, if you don't mind, Mr. McInerney, I can get to the superintendent's report.
We're concurrence with that, sir.
All right, if I can bring your attention to the Vision 2030 Finance and Infrastructure section, beginning with number 13, we're asking you to approve a change order for Integrity Roofing Incorporated for roof replacement services at the high school here. You can find that on page 3. Number 14, we're asking you to approve a resolution to appoint the firm CME Associates. You can find that on pages 3 through 4. And that is a firm that will be looking into our middle school drainage design and bid services. Number 15, on page 4, we're asking you to approve the submission of the 2016 New Jersey Achievement Coaches Program grant application that Dr. Shediak has been working very hard on. Numbers 16 and 22, 16 can be found on page 4, 22 can be found on the addendum. We're asking you to approve 2 building permits. Numbers 18 and 23, 18 can be found on page 4, and 23 can be found on the addendum. We're asking you to approve several trips with transportation costs. Number 19, we're asking you to approve tuition contracts for 2 students with disabilities attending private out-of-district schools. We do have a student in need of bedside tutoring, and we did have to perform a bilingual psychological evaluation, so we're asking you to approve that as well. That can be found on pages 5 and 6. And number 20, we're asking you to approve, and if I could ask your patience with this, Board of Education members, number 20 is missing the student ID. That is the student ID that's up there right there. This was a resolution that you approved back in August. It's for Old Bridge Township. We have a student attending in Old Bridge Township program. That's a student ID. This student is now requiring speech and language services, so they had to revise this contract. And number 21, I believe Mr. DeAndrea would like to speak with you a little bit prior to this one. So, Mr. DeAndrea, number 21, we're asking you to approve callable refunding school bonds.
At the last meeting, the Board of Education did the first reading of the bond refunding. This is the requirement to do the second reading, and tonight is also the public hearing. There was an advertisement, so when you do open up in public, for the public, it will also be an opportunity to do the public hearing on the ordinance. And then additionally, the bond council has asked that the ordinance be approved separately from your agenda item. And just to refresh everyone, this is refunding our 2006 bonds that were already refunded, and basically the opportunity and the statutes require that you have to have a minimum 3% savings in order to do this. And right now, the financial analyst has determined that we have those savings, so we're looking to move forward and hopefully get this done prior to any of the interest rates increases that they're talking about.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll take a motion, we'll approve the agenda, then we'll do a separate motion and approve the funding bond ordinance.
Please do.
And just record it as such. It'll be good.
Bringing your attention now to 2030 student achievement. Number 2, we're asking you to approve the revised honors geometry curriculum. You can find that on page 7. Items number 3 through 13 on pages 7 and 8, and number 15 on the addendum. We have several co-curricular activities we're asking you to approve. Number 14, we're asking you to approve 2 co-curricular trips, and that can be found on page 8.
Just a note, Mr. DeAndrea, under finance, I need to abstain on the appointment of CME Associates. My brother's employed by the firm.
Also on number 8 in finance, I need to abstain on also.
Any comments on student achievement or questions? Moving forward, Vision 2030 governance. Number 1, we're asking to approve or deny several grievances filed by the SEA. You can find those on pages 8 and 9. Number 2, we're asking you to approve for a first reading on the following policies. You can find that on page 9. Policy 5111, that's on admission. That is calling for the kindergarten cutoff age to go from October 31st to October 1st. Students...
September 30th.
September 30th, correct. And policy number 5020, role of the parent guardian. Essentially what has changed with regard to that policy is that no longer will parental requests be honored for specific teachers. Any questions or comments on Vision 2030 governance?
I'm going to abstain on number 1.
And Mr. DeAndrea, on number 1, I'll be voting to grant grievance 62, which means I'll be voting no on number 62 on this list.
On what?
And Mr. DeAndrea, I will be abstaining on all of the grievances since I am
okay.
conflicted and was not in attendance.
I'll also be abstaining on number 1.
Vision 2030 personnel, item numbers 1 through 2 and number 12. We're asking you to accept some resignations. A grade 7 special education language arts teacher at the middle school, a stage production costume advisor position, as well as a lunchroom playground aide at Eisenhower. You can find 1 through 2 on page 9 and number 12 on the addendum. Numbers 3, which can be found on page 10, and number 13 on the addendum. We're asking you to approve several leaves of absence. Number 4, which can be found on pages 10 and 11 and 14, which can also be found in the addendum. We're asking you to approve to hire 2 certified replacement teachers. Number 5, we're asking you to approve to hire a district maintenance worker and 2 part-time paraprofessionals on page 11 and the addendum. I think I have that confused on my slides here. I think that's 5 and 14. So 5 and 14 are the two paraprofessionals. I apologize for that mistake. Number 6 and 7, we're asking to approve an unpaid coaching aide and an athletic department volunteer. You can find that on page 11. Number 8, we're asking you to approve the transfer of a custodian from the high school to what is called our variably assigned position, and transfer another custodian from the middle school to the high school. That can be found on page 12. Number 9, which can be found on page 12, and number 15 on the addendum, we're asking you to approve 10 certified substitutes. Number 10, we're asking to approve the retroactively to pay 2 employees for workshops that they provide on Staff Development Day. That was back on November 3rd. So again, we're asking you to retroactively pay them. You can find that on page 13. And number 11, which can be found on pages 13 and 14, and number 16, which can be found in the addendum, we're asking you to approve some professional days. Any questions or comments on personnel?
I have a question on the policy.
Which one? Back to governance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, one, I just have a procedural question. This probably would go to Kevin. Have we ever done this before where we would have a first reading with one board and the second reading with a new board? Because I know, like, when I was downtown, we were never allowed to cross over, have a first reading with one, and is it okay for a school board to do that?
Yeah, I don't know if we've ever done it. The bylaws just require 2 readings, so the board and the public have a chance to see it twice. So there's
it
no-
doesn't matter that we're changing boards?
No.
Okay,
Majority still is majority.
right, but if it wasn't, like, suppose,
then
like,
it'd be- then sure.
then you would
Yeah.
just hold it over?
However, there is really no time conflict
rush.
here, so if the board wishes to...
No, we're okay.
No, it's not, I just want to make sure it's not
Okay,
a...
the way it is.
All right, the question I have it's on the bottom of page 1 and 2 in the blue. I'm not
This
sure.
is which one, the role of parent and guardians or the other one?
The role of parents, guardians.
Okay.
My specific question is, I'm not sure why we're changing this. I had always remembered, at least even when my kids were in the district, I don't ever remember this being an issue. I know principals never really honored it anyway unless there were extenuating circumstances. But why do we need to put this into a policy? And when it says here, cannot be honored except of previously documenting extenuating circumstances, what exactly is a previously documented? What does that mean, previously documented?
If in advance, the principal is aware that there might be circumstances that conflict with a child being in a certain classroom, maybe a child can't be with another child in that classroom, maybe there is a documented conflict in a relationship between a parent and a teacher.
So in other words, so suppose there was a conflict and it just wasn't documented, then that parent's just tough out of luck, according to this policy?
Well, if it wasn't documented or wasn't brought to someone's attention, the request could be construed as being, not because of a conflict, but because of a preference. And the real message in all of this is, and we believe strongly that all of our teachers are exceptional. And, I understand that our parents would like one teacher over another in some circumstances, but our principals work very closely with the teachers to develop comprehensive class lists that incorporate the ability levels of our kids, the cultural differences of our kids, gender. So these classrooms, a lot of work goes into balancing these classrooms at both ability level, a cultural level, as well as a gender level. And I think our principals are just looking for a little bit of support through policy for not feeling like they have to honor requests. And they are pressured each and every year with regard to requests for specific teachers. And again, we feel very strongly that all of our teachers are exceptional.
So has this become a problem in certain schools, like in the elementary school? Like, something must have generated this.
It was a comment and feedback that I received at an administrators meeting where our principals felt that getting that support from policy would be very beneficial to them and helpful to them in explaining to parents this position.
Okay, so is it more of an issue at the elementary level? or
I would say more of an issue probably at the elementary school, but it's not an issue that's isolated to the elementary school. It's an issue that we commonly face in the middle school and high school, probably not as much, though, as you would face in the elementary school.
Okay, and I remember back to one of the issues in, and this would have been an elementary issue, and this was a case where I know when my kids were in elementary school, the principal didn't honor a request, but if you had a teacher and then the teacher switched grades, you could go and request not to have the same teacher. Would this prevent something like that?
If there was some form of documentation to support that a parent had some form of conflict or some form of problem with that teacher, that could be one of those mitigating circumstances that had been documented previously.
Well, what if you didn't have a problem, but you just would like
Well,
your student to have a
then
new teacher?
you're left with construing, is this because the teacher has a preference? The parent has a preference, or, was there something that really occurred in the past? I mean, that's the situation that the principal is in at that point.
Yeah, but I'm just saying if it's not a problem, there's no problem with you and the teacher, but you just don't want to have the same teacher. You just like your student to switch teachers. It's
not an option.
So you can't do that anymore.
I think if that case were to be brought up, in the sense where if I'm a parent and I say, hey, listen, as you develop class lists for the next year, if at all possible, if my child could be in a different classroom, I think that's something that could be understandable and considered. But I think this policy is more or less addressing when a parent makes a request for a specific teacher.
I want to be careful with that too, because especially now with our looping initiative, that could create havoc honoring just those general requests to opt out of the looping process.
Well, the only way that would happen is if a student failed in that teacher's class, not
That-
have that teacher again. But that's,
Like I said, there are mitigating
goes without saying.
That to me could be a documented
Right.
circumstance.
Right, but when we first discussed looping, I remember when we discussed it, even like at the ed council meeting, it wasn't going to be concrete definitive, that there still would be room for these students if there were issues.
There is an
happening.
opt-out in it, absolutely. This policy is more or less addressing, I would like my child to have this teacher next year.
Well, listen, this is a
Okay.
policy. What this does is it gives a cover for a principal to deny and say, look, it's against board policy, and that's done it. But as always, with any policy, you have the
Correct.
authority to waiver it. So if there's an extenuating circumstances and you want to grant that, you could do that.
And I think that's what the policy speaks to when it
Right.
says mitigating
That's what it says
circumstances.
right in it. Okay. Next issue. Anybody else have any questions?
With regard to personnel, any questions or comments? Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to open up for the public for any questions or comments on agenda items only.
And again,
Any
Mr.
agenda
McEnroe.
items only? Seeing none, I'll close the public portion. I'll entertain a motion to accept and file a superintendent's report. The report only, we will take a separate vote on the bonding resolution. Okay. For the file the report. And need a motion, say so.
So moved.
Okay, you need a second.
Second.
I abstained on an item, so I can't make a motion.
Second.
Roll call vote
Mrs. Stratton, second.
to accept and file.
Mr. Balka?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco? Mrs.
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes, with the abstention and one no vote noted.
Mrs. Trapp?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. McEnroe?
Yes or no exceptions.
Motion and...
At this time, I'd like to
So
accept the
moved.
motion for the bonding
That thing.
resolution. I need a motion, need a second?
Second.
I need a roll call vote for the bond resolution.
Mr. Balka?
Yes.
Mrs. Bacco?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Yes.
Mr. Syak?
Yes.
Mrs. DePinto?
Yes.
Mrs. Trapp?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. McEnroe?
Yes, any committee reports worthy of speaking, unless Ms. Bacco wants to talk about pilot, you want to update us on that?
You can do it.
Okay, then we'll press on. We went to the council meeting last night to talk about the pilot. We spun our wheels. Nothing changed in the last 6 weeks. So we're going to revisit in January, the second meeting in January. We'll be going back to the Borough Council meeting and proverbially holding their feet to the fire to make a decision on which way we're going to go with the pilot. As you know, the board is requesting that the Board of Education share in the monies collected by the pilot program at a 56%, which is what we get on things that are traditionally taxed. So the saga continues, and we will not give up on pursuing that, because that's in the best interest of the public and our children and the Board of Education.
Just one thing, the next meeting is going to be January 11th, Monday, January 11th, for the rest of the board, if they wish to come. And Jill, you're welcome to.
I'll be on a cruise.
Well, there we go.
We're enjoying retirement.
There we go.
Peace out.
Okay. All right. Delegate New Jersey School Board Association, he has nothing.
I do have a lot, actually, but I'll defer my report till January in deference to the time.
You are the
Thank you.
best. You're the best.
I would like to make some comments at the end on Jill and Buddy, though.
Okay.
Okay, we'll stay for that.
Okay.
I figured you'd stay for that.
Discussion, who owns this one?
I do.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that no board member had any objection. Middlesex Regional Ed Services Commission now serves a good part of the state in various different cooperatives, gas pricing, and services, and they've requested that a letter be sent supporting them to have their name changed, and I just wanted to make sure there was if any board members had an objection, that I knew about it.
And what is the name being changed to?
I was looking for the paperwork, and I don't seem to have it, but it's...
New Jersey Regional Ed Services Commission.
Thank you. New Jersey Regional Ed Services Commission.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Anybody have any, okay, very good. Is that it?
That's all.
Mrs. Syke, this would be your time to make any comments that you'd like.
I just want to start off by thanking Mr. Brzezinski for his 3 years on the board. Mr. McEnon, you were right. He has been very quiet, but given the board that we've had and a lot of the spirited dialogue, having that quiet, vote that is just either a yes vote or a no vote, and someone who consistently has always supported the children, has been something that's been of benefit to the board. And the best part about being quiet is when you do eventually vote no, it almost stands out more and gives it more weight and more significance. On a personal level, Mr. Brzezinski, I appreciated and enjoyed the opportunity that you, Mr. Walsh, and I had after one of our meetings to go out on a Tuesday night. And I think we sat there talking and reminiscing about Sayreville the way it was years ago till probably about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. I know it was painful for all of us the following morning, but it was a really great night and a great time to kind of catch up and get to know you on a personal level and really reconnect and realize, how special this community is and how special the school district is and what an honor it is to be a part of it. So I really want to thank you for your service to Sayreville and to our children.
I thank you for those kind words, Kevin, and I'm currently laid off, and if I don't have to go to jury duty tomorrow, still early if you want to reminisce some more.
I'll second the motion.
I'll third the motion.
And Mrs. Trapp, Mr. McEnon was absolutely correct. The word that I would use to describe you in terms of your conduct and your contribution to the board is deliberative. And having you as a member of the policy committee, I think, has given us a tremendous advantage in terms of the policy that we write for this board, which guides us for years to come. Because as we go through the policies, and you would always apologize, I'm sorry, I'm asking so many questions, but every question that you asked was looking at a scenario of what could happen, what happens if we do this, are we considering every option, well, what about this, and that contributes to being a good board member, it contributes to outstanding policy, and I always enjoyed having you as part of our policy committee on the board.
Well, thank you. I'll comment and say I thought I was just being a scooch, so I wasn't.
No. And in addition to that, just, being with you at all of the different student events, you were always out there, conference nights, PTA, tricky trays, how many of those have we done?
Games.
And I think the best part that I always appreciated on a personal level is after we had a meeting that somewhere took a hard left that we never got back, 9 o'clock or sometimes earlier in the morning, I would call Jill and I would say, Jill, what happened last night? And we would just talk for about an hour as I had my cup of coffee, just going through everything that we did wrong the previous night. So, Jill, I'm really going to miss you, and thank you for your service to Sayreville school children.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. President.
She was a scotch.
It was part of my job, I
Okay,
think.
this time I'd like to open up for the public for any questions or comments of business may come before this board. I see some movement in the audience.
My little girlfriend.
All right. Jill, you know this is the only
Can you
reason.
identify yourself just for the record?
My name is Lisa Reback. I live at 7 Charles Street, and this is Julia Reback, who also lives at 7 Charles Street. Jill, the first time, I still remember our first meeting. It was in the hallway of Eisenhower School, outside the art room, and I accosted you and Kevin because you, as a board, did not vote to move the elections to November. And I don't think you were happy until I walked away from that conversation, understanding your point of view. So yes, everything Kevin and Mike have said tonight is true, and as we have become better friends, and I appreciate even your insights into every aspect of our lives. So Julia wanted to bring you some presents, and we just wanted to say thank you for your service to our district and the children in the district.
Oh, well,
Thank you.
thank you.
Helen Bruner Rakuya, 18 Chelsea Court. I want to thank both Buddy and Jill for their service for the board, for their service to our schools and to Sayreville. Buddy, it was always a pleasure working with you. I miss working with you, especially at least hearing you talk when we were in the back room. Jill has had 2 children that went through the Sayreville schools, but Jill always says she has 6,000 children. She looked at every student in this district as her own and made every decision keeping that in mind. She served on many committees. One of her favorites was actually contract negotiations. Seriously, she stepped up willingly every time negotiations came up, even though it was quite unpopular to do that. She chose to negotiate because she loved the staff and she wanted to support them. She fought hard to advocate no matter what the job title of our staff members was. Her heart was always concerned with the community, parental involvement, and the activities that our students were involved with. She didn't want anyone ever to be excluded and worked tirelessly to involve the parents in the schools. The parents of the district are losing a strong advocate for involvement. Jill, my favorite quote you know is, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." I believe that you practice that every day. You serve others to make this world a better place. You made me a better person. Nothing you did, no decision that you ever made was ever done lightly or without careful thought and serious deliberation. You carefully considered every point of view and always kept an open mind. You reasoned thoughtfully and meticulously and gave everyone the benefit of the doubt, no matter what. You taught me to slow down, think, and weigh everything carefully. I never would have thought that 9 years ago, 8 years ago, when I walked up to you in the park to introduce myself as the person that was writing all those crazy emails, that you would become one of my best friends. In the end, this is a loss to Sayreville. Serving beside you on the board was one of my proudest accomplishments, and we're all privileged to have served with you. Sayreville won't be the same without you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was beautiful, Helen. Thank you.
John Bovary, 1210 Harbor Club Drive. I'm not getting anywhere near emotional with that stuff, right? Thanks to everybody for serving on the board at all times, Jill for quite a while, right? I just want to know at 4 a.m. in the morning, was Mike coherent enough to be able to count to 21?
Yeah, for the most part. We didn't drink much.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to everybody.
I think I just been insulted.
On that note, I move we adjourn.
So moved. Please come up and join us for some cake, please.